is this the script the best it can be now, today? Have I done everything that I can at this moment? And maybe that means it's not even done. The question part of the comment was, can we discuss when or how to take a break from a screenplay or stop writing a screenplay, because it's hard to try and get a screenplay to be perfect, but also build up a portfolio at the same time? And it's a really good question.
It is a good question. Yeah.
When you're starting out, I know I suffered from this. When you're starting out, you do tend to focus all of your energy on one script.
Yeah.
And
we did, didn't we? For years, it was Silver Fox.
A long time.
Yeah.
And then even the ones after, there's a tendency to want to like really not let go, make it perfect. And I think that, here's the thing. You want the best script that you can do. And not everyone writes fast. And if it takes you a long time and you're working support jobs and you're only able to do an hour every so often, it might take a really long time on one script. I'm a believer personally that it is better to have one really great script than 5.
I agree. Yeah. And also, but then again, the other, like, does it have to be extremes? Could it be like it's of course it's really good to have one really, really, really excellent script. It really is. And that becomes, I think, a calling card. But would it be good to have 3 very good scripts? It's one of those things.
I guess it depends on your philosophy in terms of, like, I don't know. I personally don't like the idea of ever sending a script out to market that you don't think is your very best work.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
if you're like, oh well, I can do one rewrite on this, but I don't really have. Then I'm just going to move on, and it is what it is.
Yeah. I feel like you've called.
I don't know.
I feel like you've called me out on that before, when I've gone like, this scene's good enough, and you're like, no, good enough isn't okay. Like it needs to be the best version it can be. And I think there's benefit in that. And also, per the nature of the question, at what point do you go, you know what, I actually need to put this down?
And that is
I've been listening to and reading Stephen King's autobiography. Which one's when you write it yourself? Autobiography, yeah. But also it really is talking about his life in writing. And it's great. If you haven't read Stephen King on writing, it's just excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to it, and he narrates it, and it's just wonderful. But one of the things that he does a lot of the time is he just puts something down, puts it in a drawer, and comes back to it at some point later. And it's interesting because what did we have recently whereby we had put a script down for a little while, and we came back to it and we went, oh,
yeah.
Having the time and distance away from that has really helped.
A couple of things.
It's helped illuminate 2 things. It's interesting. It highlighted for me what was good about the script.
Right.
And what I still enjoyed.
Right.
And also I could see, with the benefit of perspective and not being in it, to go, this is the area where it needs improving.
Right.
I'm absolutely guilty in several instances of feeling that something was ready before it was ready.
Yeah, but I agree with the idea of not spending your life perfecting that one script.
Yes,
and I think a really good example of that for us was the first script that we ever wrote together. Which is a script called Silver Fox. And it was a script that I had actually started originally and had spent a long time writing. I mean, at least a year. I was working 2 support jobs at the time. And then Jake and I started working together, and the thing we decided to do was do a rewrite on that script. And then we worked on that script for at least a year, at least close to it, various drafts. We did multiple things on it. And I do think there is a point where you have to recognize, are you at the place in your life, your writer's journey as a creative writer, to get that script to its best place? Is that your best work, or are you just being overly critical? And then if it's not your best work yet, and you've been working on it for a year, put it down.
Yeah.
Because you can, I mean, this is one of those scripts that we have actually come back to now, 11 years later, 14 years later. 14 years later.
Yeah, 14 years later.
And it was a really interesting thing to look at it and go, wow, like nobody's ever seen this script. It was, we didn't even have reps at the time.
No.
But you go, you know what? The idea was really good. There was some really cool stuff here.
Yeah.
Now that we are 14 years further into our writing career and our craft, we could actually see how we could make this a really cool movie. And so I don't think you should be afraid to say, you know, maybe this isn't the one, and keep going. And, you know, I know it can be frustrating. I know we have gotten frustrated at times recently, whereby we had started scripts and then stopped them because we got stuck. And it can be frustrating to go, well, I didn't actually finish that.
And there is it's a very complex and convoluted question as well, because you kind of go, at what point is it ready? At what point do you go,
it's ready when you feel it is the best that you can do? That's when it's ready.
Sure.
When you read it and you go, yeah, this is the best.
I would add that having 5 to 6 weeks away from a script, away from a project, and then reading it after that and going and asking yourself that question then is the best. Or maybe it's a month, whatever it is, a period of time when you can kind of forget about it and maybe even work on something else for a while. Because when you're in it, and even if you're freshly in it, I think perspective can be very difficult. We had an experience recently where we went and revisited a script, and I was like, I don't think, as I read it, I didn't think it was the best it could have been. And at the time, I didn't feel that. I was all like, yes, it's ready. Let's go. Let's get it out there, etc. And as I reread it, I went, this is a project we've been developing with a producer, to be clear.
I think that look, I don't think that every project you're going to have the luxury of putting something down for a month and coming back to it. It all depends on the situation.
If it's a paid gig,
if
you
it's
might
a
not.
job and you have a 3-month deadline,
Very
you
valid.
don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
And you will ultimately have to submit a draft, but you can go over your deadline a little bit if you think you can still make it better and better.
And also adding into it, perspectives of other people.
Yeah, perspectives of other people. But I genuinely think that, like, you know, all of those are factors that you can look at. You go, is this the script the best it can be now, today? Have I done everything that I can at this moment? And maybe that means it's not even done. Maybe that means I'm somewhere in the middle of Act 2 and I go, I have done everything I can with this script today, and it's time to put it down for however long it might be, and then come back to it another time. It doesn't mean that the idea is bad. It doesn't mean the writing that you've done up until that point is bad.
Yeah.
It just means you have to just be honest with yourself and go, can this be better? Or have I gotten as far as I can get with where I am as a writer? You know, I genuinely feel like, you know, the work that we submit, I would say 95% of the time, or send out, that we feel, or at least I feel,
in that moment,
is the best that it can be at that time. Now, here's the thing about movies and writing: it's never done.
Well, that's what we were saying the other day, wasn't it? Right. It's like movies aren't ever finished; they're abandoned.
Yeah, and so if you are writing a script and you feel like it's the best it can be at that moment, and you also feel that it's the best that you can do as a writer at that point in your life, then great. Send it out there.
Totally.
If you feel like you're stuck and you are having a writer's block moment, or if you are just like, I know there's something here, but it's just not what it could be, then put it down. You know, I think that we all have to realize that that writing, like any other art or craft, is something that you get better and better and better at. The writer that we are today collectively is a very different writer than the writer that we were 14 years ago. And you'll never have the opportunity to put every single project down and wait 14 years and read it again. You know, so I feel like it's a very personal question. You need to ask yourself. And you also, I think, do need to look at the fact, like, if you've been working on something, and I won't use years or months, but think about hours. Think about if you've put in, you know, I would say what, like
32 hours into a project and you still can't get out of that
2 hours. I mean, like, you know, if you've put in like 300 hours, and that might be a whole year for you, if that's all you.
It might be. Yeah, it
but
might
if you
be.
Put in 300 hours into a script and it's just not working, you probably need some space from it. You probably, I mean, that's what 300 hours is like.
I mean, if you
6 weeks or so, right? Of 6 full working weeks. And actually, it's probably more like 10. You know, it's like 10 weeks of work. I think if we were writing a spec and we were 10 weeks in and we were like, fuck.
Still at the end of it, still not feeling it. Maybe just go, let's put that down and come back.
There, we'd go, you know what? Let's not just keep trudging through the mud. Let's take some distance from it, you know? And everybody has a different, like, we're lucky enough to be able to do this full time. And so, you know, 300 hours is, you know, 8 to 10 weeks or whatever, you know, for us. And sometimes you won't even get there. I'm talking about when you're so passionate about something that you just want to keep going and keep going and keep going, but you're never getting there. That's what I'm talking about. You gotta, and I do think there's constantly a reassessment. Like, let's say you've gotten to that 300 hours or whatever it is, and you have a full draft, and you're like, it's still not where it needs to be, but I know where it could be, and I know I can get it there. Well, then fucking get it there. That's what I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, even if it takes you another 300 hours.
Right.
But if you go, I think it's there, I'm not really sure. And, you know, I feel like new writers and myself included, there's this desire to just rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. And sometimes it's almost out of an insecurity that you're not ready to share it. So you're just going to keep rewriting it and keep rewriting it. And, I don't think I'm capable perhaps of making it the best that it can be. And it really is about self-reflection and about going, you know, where am I as a writer?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, indeed.
You know, so that's
good.
I hope that answers that question. And I know that, you know, it's a
difficult question.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult emotionally, isn't it? It's,
when do you put something down that you love?
Down. Yeah.
I mean, there's different things too, isn't there? Like when you're told no, it might be a good time to put something down. And yet we haven't always.
And again, you know, you look at examples of the amount of times people were told no about something.
Well, Winter's Night, we were told no, and we wrote it anyway, and we sold it for 7 figures.
But again, like I even look at examples like famously J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of rejection she got for that manuscript, was it like 25, 30? Like it's huge.
Yeah.
And then, but she believed in it so much that she knew it was the best it was going to be for that point. Yeah. Undoubtedly reworked it with an editor, but it was, I believe in this so much, and viewed it as good enough.
I guess, the context of the question that was being asked is, how do you build out a portfolio and do the best work that you can? And I guess here's a second answer to that question.
Yeah.
And everybody's different. But you and I, Jake and I, have never really had a portfolio. Every script we've written has been the next script that we've either sold or tried to sell and thus failed.
Yeah.
If we finished it, we have tried and we have started specs. We have then gone.
Yeah. We have one script in our portfolio that was this. I mean, I would say we have 3 scripts in our portfolio that
they're not finished.
Well, one was the one the one we developed when we signed a shopping agreement for. That was an old script. Now, I guess that had gone out on sale.
Yeah. I mean, look, a portfolio as a new writer is very different than
it is.
You've got a trunk of old scripts that never went anywhere.
Right.
That's not a portfolio.
Yeah, sure. No, I hear you.
I'm talking about, like, if you're asking about how many scripts should I have in order to enter the business, or how much do I need in order to get a manager, or how much do I need in order to be considered, a professional screenwriter.
Well, how many do you think that is?
I mean, honestly, I think it's one good one.
One good one, and at least.
I sold the first script I ever wrote.
Yeah.
It was one script, and it got made into a movie. I felt like I was a screenwriter at that point. I didn't need to have 5 scripts under my belt. Sure. And the next script that I wrote, I intended to sell. It didn't sell, but the intention, I never wrote for samples. And I still, I'm very vocal about this, and some people would disagree with me. I don't believe in writing samples.
Yes.
I don't believe it. I think it's crazy. I believe that you should, every single story, if you believe in a story well enough to sit down and do 300 hours of writing on it,
I guess my question is do people view things as samples?
Yeah.
Maybe, like, for example, we wrote The Princess, and our manager was like, we'll try and sell it. If it doesn't sell, it'll be a really good sample.
Well, but that's not what he originally said. He was like, I don't know where it would sell, but it'll be a really good sample. Sure. Had we gone into writing it as just I wouldn't have started writing that with the belief that, it'll just be a good sample.
No.
We wrote that to sell it, and we just didn't agree with his thought process.
Yes.
But I have seen, whether it's been on Screenwriter Twitter, or whether it's been in other forums, or whether it's been people asking questions of me personally about what's a good sample, or what do you should I write a sample? Like, I just don't think that approaching a project with the mindset that this isn't to sell, it's just to show how good of a writer I am. Mm-hmm. It's like, why would you do that? And so I guess the idea of, like, building a portfolio, to me, that just means that you've written the best script that you can, and that you're still attempting to get representation. You're attempting to get it into the right hands of a producer, and you now have moved on to your next script.
Yeah, sure.
But if every script you write, you then...
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because, it's almost like in TV, and you hear varying opinions, and it swings one way and then swings back the other way about writing a spec of an existing television show.
I think it's gone away now, though.
Well, it's funny because recently talk was about it coming back, and that people saying, as a showrunner, I want to see, if I'm going to hire you on as staff, that you can write in a pre-existing voice for a pre-existing character. Now that is a writing sample.
Really? That is specific, though, isn't it? That's not writing a screenplay.
Nope.
And that's writing to get on staff.
Yes.
And I think that is like that's like a resume for a job in a way. It's like, you know, when my sister's in fashion and when she goes in to get a job, she has to present a portfolio that is essentially, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
That isn't going to be what she then makes when she starts her new job.
Of course.
But it's an example of what she can do.
Absolutely.
Now, in TV, I mean, for a while, and it was you write your own original pilot, and then that is your sample. And so you have both. You can, one, try and go out and sell that one day. And two, you can try and use that to get staffed on a job. I'd be curious if there are any showrunners out there, and maybe we'll ask some people that we know, if they prefer to read a pilot or if they prefer to read a spec TV episode. But for the purpose of screenwriting, which is what we're here to do, at least right now, I think that, you know, sample scripts are scripts that tried that could have sold but didn't and are really good. And and a sample script, really the best sample script is the script that did sell. So Winter's Night, which was our biggest sale, is still our sample script.
It is.
It's day. Now The Princess is. I mean,
now
actually, it's changed.
Yeah.
Because now The Princess.
It also depends as well. Yeah, on what.
Depends on what.
Exactly.
But like, we have scripts that maybe weren't as good, but we tried to sell all of them, and they didn't sell.
Yeah.
And then they go in the quote portfolio, and that's what we're talking about in terms of this. We have a script we can't talk about right now, which is an old one that we're breathing new life into. That I feel like is a different. That's not I put it down or I wrote this to be part of my portfolio.
Sure.
That's we went out, we gave it the best shot that we could. It didn't sell, so it's in the filing cabinet.
It's in the filing cabinet. And if anyone says, "Hey, have you got $180 million fantasy movie?"
We wrote a movie for Sony. We wrote a movie for Sony called The Wells Initiative, and there's press about it. And it was an origin story of kind of how H.G. Wells wrote his novels, and the fantasy of it all was that he actually lived through events that inspired them. And it was this great fun action adventure sci-fi, and we wrote it for Sony, and we had it was a wonderful producer, Carter Swan, who was producing it for us. And when that didn't move forward for various reasons, as scripts do, you know, he was like, one day I'm going to be in a room and someone is going to say, you know, I've always wanted to do something about H.G. Wells. And that's when I'm going to pull this script out and go, boom, I've got one.
Totally.
And that is a sample for that specific thing. Yeah. Now, sometimes we've gone out for perhaps like something that is the same type of feeling, and we've sent that as a sample. But, you know,
I love that script.
Anyway, we're off the question at this point, but the idea basically of a portfolio, and the reason I was talking about it was, I don't think that you should, and this is just
think about a script.
I don't think you should write for a portfolio. I think you should write to get a movie made, and if that movie doesn't get made, then add that to your portfolio.
Yeah, I concur.
Yes. In fact, we are writing this spec right now, not just for you to enjoy it. We want to sell it. We want the movie to be made. I mean, ultimately, that's the end goal. It's not even the sale. It's the actual making of a movie.
Indeed.
So, speaking of which, I think we need to turn to
our movie.
Our movie, yeah.